Okay. Mr. Mayor, looks like we've got about 4 or 5, 3 people online. Good, not including Deanna. Yeah.
It's not.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
It's all right.
It isn't at this time because we were going to be going over that. And changing the names because it's right here. It's not critical. The next one.
Sure.
Something like this. That is today, which is one of the.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Ready when you are, sir.
Okay. I'll give it Tom. 12. July 6th, Gerhart Town Hall for the water rate increase is called to order. I'd like to say welcome and thank you for coming out to this town hall. This town hall is to discuss and educate the people of Gerhart about the water rate increase and the need for it. This is the sole topic of discussion. Everything else can be brought up at the council meeting in a week. We have a lot to get to, so now I'll turn it over to Chad to give a little summary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just for public as well, Mr. Steve Donovan was supposed to be here today, but he's stuck in traffic and had to turn around, something about Highway 26 and an accident. So we'll do our best to work around that. He was just going to be here to kind of help answer any questions that might come up that you might be better equipped to answer. But I think that we've got most everything that we need. And Steve Donovan's PowerPoint presentation is still online. It's still from our previous meetings that we had when we were discussing this. So in Steve's agenda, why are we here tonight? What are we doing? What is the health of the water system and the way that it's operating? And how are we going to accommodate for the future? So the financial trends in the water fund has been something that's been concerning to us for the last couple of years, if not 3.
Chill out.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. So our concern has been there. We've been watching kind of how things were playing out with the economy and with weather and with rates. But what we're finding is that we're underfunded. The revenue is not meeting the expenses, and now we are actively pulling money out of the reserve account to go ahead and make up for those expenses. Now, some of the things that happened within that was, of course, over the last 3-5 years, really, we've seen an incredible amount of changes in expenses. Everything seems to have gone up at least 30%. It's not quite in labor, but in the parts, pieces, and the operations. Power prices have gone up. Chemical prices have gone up. Pipe, the availability of pipe, and the availability and the cost of the meter program that we're putting in. All of these things started becoming more and more expensive, yet our rates stayed stagnant. Now, part of this was back in the beginning when the city of Gerhart was working on this water rate or this having our own water system. The goal was to reduce the cost to the Gerhartians. People that live here in Gerhart were tired of paying extra money onto their water bills because Warrenton was busy trying to put together their water system and they needed to raise the rates. So Deerhart came up with this plan to put in our own water treatment facility. And it sounds like it was an easy process, but Mark McFadden was available, working on that years prior to this water treatment facility becoming active. And it's a state-of-the-art system that we have that is a very good system, yet it's costly. We basically are turning electricity into water. That's how you think about it. That's probably one of our biggest expenses there. But other things that have gone up is the 7.47% increase in personal services, which is labor costs. Materials and service costs have just continued to increase on the average. And the city was also putting in, probably with our rate structure the way it was, maybe too much money into our reserve accounts as well. In 2013, the city actually adjusted their rates, and most of all those rates went down. It wasn't a rate increase except for the overage amount. So when people use more water than they're allocated for their basic amount, they pay an additional amount of money for each unit of water that happens after that. That's also in many communities part of the conservation plan. So people who use a lot of water pay a little extra. And that's how it's been set up. So back in 2013, when they did this new ordinance, they actually brought main water, the regular water rates down a bit, about $4 to $5 at that point. The reason is because what Deerhart was told was that the water treatment facility was going to lower the rates. So they wanted to make sure that that happened. The other aspect of that is that we've been trying to, and this is past councils as well, trying to keep the rates in order because the people in Deerhart were also paying for a bond. There was two bonds, for the total of $11 million, which worked out to be about $1.27 per thousand. And so the inside, the city folks were paying that tax. The outside of the city folks were not paying that tax. So that's why we see an increased water rate for outside the city, kind of making up for that tax payment that they're not making, but most of you are. So over time, with the expenses and over COVID, things just started accelerating pretty quickly. And so here we are. So our idea was to contact a person, Steve Donovan, and his company goes ahead and goes through the water systems, our expenses, our revenues, and everything along with it. And we asked him for some recommendations. And as he presented to the public and the city council, he recommended that we increase our rates. And he was very concerned that if we didn't increase our rates, we were going to continue to spend down our reserve accounts. And, one day become insolvent. So that's why we're here tonight. What we're talking about, what Donovan's idea was to increase the rates by about 5% this year, and then maybe 5% or 10% moving forward, depending on how things kind of shook out. We took a deeper look into the numbers. We wanted to go ahead and get healthier a little bit sooner, and then also start putting together some money to replace the reserve account funds that we're using now, and then to increase those reserve accounts. Now, whether or not this first rate increase is going to accomplish all those things is probably not. This is a starting point for us to kind of get going. But when we got into discussions with the city council and we started looking at these numbers, we decided that from a 5% and what the staff is going to be proposing to the city council is that we don't do a 5% increase, and that we seriously look at a 15% increase on the rates across the board. This would be for your basic rates, depending on the size of meter that you have. It gets a little complicated, but for most of us, I'll kind of stay within what most residents have here. But so a 50% increase on the basic rate. So currently, your basic rate in Deerhart is $39 every 2 months. It's incredibly low. Especially when you compare it to anybody else in the world. But we looked at these rates and we thought, well, 5% doesn't really get us to our goal fast enough. And we do have some plans that we want to make some pipe replacements, and that's very, very expensive, especially with these things. So we're anticipating, or we would like to recommend a 15%. $39 to the average citizen, 2 months worth of water, and that gives you 7,480 gallons. 7,480 gallons, 10 consumption units of water. Consumption unit is a yard of water? Cubic yard, yeah. So in a cubic yard, you can fit 748. We give you 10 cubic feet for your $39, it's $7,498. The average use of us, the residents in Deer Heart, is about, in the heavy season, is about 11 consumption units of water. So that is the amount that they get for the $39 allocation. But on that 11th consumption unit, which is 600 or 748 gallons, they're paid an additional, or they're charged an additional amount, $6.44, right? So it's a little bit more expensive than the $39 10 units, $6.44. So what does that do? That helps us with the overage and the amount of water that we make, because it gets expensive. The harder we have to work, the more water that we make, it is expensive. So there is a cost increase for that. But that additional fee also encapsulates a water conservation levy, so that people who are going to spend the extra water know that they're going to spend the extra water, and then they're prepared to pay for that. To some of us, it might make us think twice, to say, okay, well, rather I had a conversation with Ms. Mansell today, and she was like, well, when that started happening and the rates went up, I went from sprinklers to hand watering, and I reduced my water by 50%. So that's the goal. And we do have water conservation plan needs, and we should be saving as much water as possible, right? Not using it just willy-nilly. Deer Heart has changed a lot. If you look at that picture, 1977, Deer Heart was kind of allowed to brown out back in the days. And some of that was water availability, some of that was cost. There was all sorts of factors. And it just wasn't kind of a mindset of people to be watering all the time. Well, you can't really see it too well, but now you go into this, and that was taken about the same period of time, and we really gained that. So with more people coming into town, more landscaping, people are spending more time. During the 2010 to 2020 period of time, we had an increase of about over 300 people in Deer Heart, a 22% increase. And what I just realized the other day is that did not include COVID, the COVID bump, if you will, of people moving into town. So how many people do we have new into town? It's gone up. The other thing that kind of was a factor in this was the weather. You know, there's some years where there wasn't much water usage because we got a good amount of rain. So we didn't spend a lot of money, and we made some revenue, and things were looking good. And that's kind of what we were planning on, hoping that that would stay the same over a couple of years, but it didn't. You know, it just got very dry. Now, the other big issue in this, and then I'll end this, and just kind of get this out there, is that the city of Warrenton. The city of Warrenton actively provides us with 25% of our water here in Deer Heart. And we've got a great relationship with Warrenton. Mark McFadden works very closely with all of their staff. And we are in negotiations, as you know now, and been working with the water rates, and we will see a water rate increase because they've got some big things on the horizon. They've got an expensive system to run. They need to upgrade it, and they've got a lot of building that's probably going to happen in the future that they need their water rates for. So, of course, we're not able to produce all of our water because during the process of us putting in this water treatment facility, Oregon Water Resources Division, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and others, including the city of Warrenton, were very concerned with the way that the aquifer and all that would perform. So we are under restricted water ability to pull out all the water that we need in the summertime. As a matter of fact, we can pull out very little of the water that we use in the summertime. So sound about right?
Right now, for instance, we can pull 198 gallons. That's it, compared to the 600 that we can pull. So,
Yeah.
next month it'll go down to 129 gallons a minute. So, and then September it starts going back up again. But August is our lowest month.
So we have to buy 25% of our water from Warrenton, which is expensive. And that, the monies, the revenues that we're bringing in during the rest of the year is helping fund part of those expenses, because your rates aren't changing, but the revenues are kind of taking care of that expense. So now that we know where Warrenton is, we have some rates, they have a direction that they're going to head. We know where we're at, and we have this new study, and we acknowledge that we need to do some changes. It's not that we're not running efficiently. We're running very efficiently. As a matter of fact, we might be running too efficiently. We are not spending money willy-nilly. But and with that mindset, we allowed the rates to stay where they were and the expenses to raise, and now we're catching them a little bit. Water rights is something that the mayor and I have been talking a lot about lately, and we are heading in a direction to find out some more information. Gearhart would like to have enough water rights to be able to take care of Gearhart. And so that's our goal. Whether or not we're going to get that, we're not sure. But what we do have is almost 12 years, 11 years of great data. We don't know what the data means, really. We have some ideas of what it means. We don't think we're doing a huge disservice to the aquifer or drawing it down. But now that we have this data and we have these rate increases from Warrenton and we have these additional expenses, it's time for us to do a water rate adjustment, and it's time for us to do some work on getting more water rights. That's where we're at. Is there anything in that else that I need to fill in at the moment? It's the basic layout of where we're at. We think that with these water rate adjustments, and we have a new update, the previous presentation was done on a 5% increase. We had Steve Dogman do a new one for a 15% increase. And what you see there, you see this is basically, and I can explain it, we're going to see an increase in revenue, and then we're going to get our available cash carry forward, which is our working capital, up here fairly soon to a level with a infusion of cash from the water reserve. It's going to bring us up into a healthy position. Then we're going to go down for a year, for a period of time, because Warrenton's water rates take effect in 2024 at this time. So we're going to go down for a little bit, but then we should continue to rise up on a 15% increase to make this work where we're putting enough money away, and we have replenished our reserve account, and we have grown our cash carry forward, and that could take 3 years. I anticipate it might happen a little bit earlier, but I'm not going to make any guarantees in that. It's only because I understand and have a good understanding with Mark about how this is all operating and what these rates will do and how we're operating in the future. So 15% now, and then we've also told the council that moving forward, we are going to study this every year during the budget process. Every year, we're going to have discussions about how this increases work, what is going on in the industry, what's going on in the environment, what's going on with everything that's going on financially, and then make decisions moving forward after this 15% increase. So next year, could we see another increase? It's possible. We've talked about that. Some of us think it's a great idea. Some of us think, well, let's wait and see where we're at. So in that thought process, we decided on, from the staff's point of view, 15%. And we think that's a pretty good start. We'll start seeing some results from that. We'll study those results, and then we will make recommendations with the council's help moving forward, especially during the next year's budget cycle. So with that, that's what I have to kind of kick it off.
Okay. So do we have any copies of this paper?
Yeah, they have that.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, they have that. So that paper is the rate increase comparison sheet. Did you want me to go over that a little bit?
That would be good if we went over it, and then we'll turn it over to comment.
Okay. So I'm just going to really concentrate on the first line, and don't know if I'm going sideways on any of this, please. So your meter size, and the first one is the 5/8 to 3/4, and that is us, general public. Most homes here have the 5/8 to 3/4 connection through their meter, comes off the water main, and that's what supplies your house. These other connections on meter sizes, the 1 inch, we have a few homes that do that, 1.5 inches, and then when you get into larger meters, it's usually having to do with some commercial. So those are the rates as laid out. So the important one with the stars, the 5/8 to 3/4, your consumption range in that, you get 0 to 10 units, 7,480 gallons. The current city rates are $39. If we increase those rates by 15%, it shows that it would bring us up almost a little over $5 for 2 months. So every 2 months, you pay $5 in addition. Then there's a comparison to current outside city rates. You see that they're $58.50 and we're $39 here in the city. their proposed outside city rates would come up to 67.29. The other part in that is, where is the overage? Thank you, overages, all meter sizes. So currently, as I said earlier, you pay $6.44 for every additional 748 gallons. Inside the city, $9.66 outside. That price will go up to $7.41 per consumption unit and $11.12 outside. And then you're welcome to go through the other rate sizes or the meter sizes as you will, but most by a huge margin is the 5/8 to 3/4.
That's it?
I have a question. What percent of our customers are outside of city rates?
Anybody want to take a stab?
I just say like 20%.
20%?
Maybe.
We've got the Palisades, they're not in the city of Gerhart.
Highlands,
The Highlands,
Teal Court, Mallard Court, Gulf Beechwood, so I'd say about 20%.
Ocean Home Farms.
Yeah, so stuff on highway. So
so there are places outside our town that were done years and years ago that we provide water for.
Okay, thank you.
it might be less than that, but I don't know.
I don't have any cards for comments.
There's one.
Are there
Okay.
any next, Stephen?
Okay, so some of you have some cards with some things that you wanted to talk about. Did anybody fill out the comment cards?
And check the box that you wanted to speak. Nobody wants to speak.
I'll
That's
check my box.
Well,
that's all right. I can do that for you, Paulina. Okay, well, it's, you need it back? Okay. Paulina, I'm gonna call on you since that's the only card I've gotten that has a mark in the box.
Line Cochran, 2186 Pine Ridge Drive. So I wrote this a little bit ago and I'll maybe try and state it better now that I've seen this. I think the water rate increase is necessary. However, I think that the council should include a modest increase for use over the first or second tier of water use as a conservation strategy. I refer you to page 30 of the Water Conservation Plan document that states that you will study doing this in 2024. Seems illogical to not just do it now. It's for everything you do. And so I guess on this sheet, it would be the overage. So what I'm saying, maybe that first comment, proposed rate of 741 is fine, but maybe if there are people using 12 cons or 13 or 14 or 15, that you would do some sort of escalated pricing for that amount of water use.
Okay,
very similar to the Halem's
I don't know Nahala.
water system. Miss Justine just kind of did that, and they've got a pricing schedule that if you're continue to use more, the price continues to rise. And we discussed that with Steve, our consultant, and he thought that to get going on this, let's go ahead and get the 15%. And he did present me with a tiered system that was very complicated. And to start with, we wanted to keep this easy so that we can begin heading in the right direction. But that is something that we are considering for the next iteration or the next budget season to discuss how that will work.
Approve it now and give yourself a year to put it in place. Other than the first little bit. I
Might be the way we end up going, but I'm not sure about next week.
Right, next week I will tell. It's a city council meeting. Okay, well, since no one else put in a paper, check the box. Is there anyone who wants to speak at this time about it? Pat?
Tricia Roberts, 366 North Ocean. I just have a question. So you're gonna raise the rates right now 15% starting January 1st
No, we're actually looking at doing it through the summer.
through this summer? Okay.
I mean, that's really up to
Okay,
the city
okay,
council.
I didn't
That's
know
what we're
that.
recommending.
Okay, the next part of that question is, so then when next year, when warranted, whenever they raise, is there an accompanying raise in our rates, or is it still at that 15%?
Miss Justine and I have had this conversation,
Mhm.
and we actually put our budget together and the way that we presented it, thinking that Warrenton was going to do the increased rates this year. That budget is still in place.
Okay, so it includes the Warrenton's raise.
It does, short way to, long way to grandma's house, but yes, I think that it does.
Big bad wolf.
And then that way we can kind of see how this performs over a period of time and make a good decision moving forward next year. So this will get us headed in the right direction.
Anybody else? Bob?
I just want to thank you all for doing this and getting it in place, so just do appreciate it, and and I might even encourage you to go with 20% instead of 15. The other one is obviously right now I'm the biggest water user for our little residents down here in the school. But we're on a drip system, which you'll see plants not functioning on the drip system. So you see Bob out there with his hose, because the alternative is we're balancing just like a spray system, because you're losing good plant material and you're weighing that, and we know we only water in the summer. We know in 2 years from now, we don't expect to be watering anything. So again, my apologies if you see me with a sprinkler versus my hose to save the drip system stuff along the fence line. So
In the
but again,
whole
I think you're doing a great job, and thank you so much for putting this in place.
grand scheme of things, it's just water. And I guess when we balance trees and water, you know, we're gonna go there.
Can I ask him a question?
This is a couch type conversation.
I'm just curious, so do you, or did you get an opinion that the drip system is far superior as far as conserving water versus the typical?
Quite honestly, from my own experience in watching it perform, it's working in some spots, it's others, it's not, depending on the number of heads you have going around, it's got drip systems around all the trees you see going north-south, but have 4 heads around each of them. We're installed the same way on the stuff along the street, 2 heads. I was out of the country, came back, looked and said, we've got a problem. So we actually have them scheduled to come out and have these, maybe doing spraying to save that CNO stuff along the edge. Or I have to go out the evening and spray by hand. We have drip systems on everything, basically, other than the birds. And they seem to be functioning just fine. So all those trees are on drip stuff.
And Mark, do you know anything about that, one versus the other? Here's where I'm headed. And I'm just gonna throw this out to everybody. Could we, if people went onto a drip system as opposed to the traditional, throw it up into the air, have half of it evaporate stuff, could we give them some kind of an incentive or a break? I'm just thinking.
Well, it all depends on what they're planning, you know. I mean, a lot of stuff takes water differently, but I mean, on lawn, there's really, I mean, most of our issues with the water usage is in plants in this city. It's right in moss. So, and for that, you've got to spray those things. You can't just do it on that. So, I mean, that's our biggest user.
In Hawaii, they're starting to install the sprinkler systems underneath the lawns. And they're doing things that are quite unique because they do have to. So it's like a irrigation system that floods from underneath. And so you don't get the overspray, you don't get the loss of evaporation as much and that sort of thing. We have done a few posts, and what I really recommend to people is that they install a smart irrigation system. We installed one here recently. I installed one at my house, and what it does is it just connects to the internet with all the weather. You don't need your weather station. It was $150, and I installed it myself. Is that new? Never mind. And what it does is every day it checks the wind, the weather, the sun. And when it's too windy, it doesn't water. When it is been raining, it doesn't water. When it realizes that you water and then the temperature hasn't been that high, it skips it. It's called a saturation skip. And I don't have to do a thing. I can tone it down a little bit, which I did. Now my grass is somewhere between green and brown. But I also have grandkids that don't want to plant grass. So that is one aspect. And the water conservation is very important for this. And yeah, there can be incentives, or at least we can help people through this. But we already talked this winter or when it starts raining, we're gonna kind of peek around early in the morning and see who's watering in the rain. And then just make some friendly suggestions that maybe they don't do that or install something to do.
I've spoke to a lot of the local landscapers that are pretty well known around here too and stuff. They've told me that people a lot of people don't understand their controllers and they'll just turn them on and it'll always change. I've seen them actually, they've told me that they've had to go out and redo them all the time because they'll just change them and won't understand what it's doing. And so they're overwatering for no reason whatsoever. So there's a lot of miseducation there on how to use your controller as well. So.
I'd like to see us put out some education on what types of systems you know, you
Yeah,
recommend and
that would help,
other
sure.
water conservation,
Sure.
like the toilets and, you know,
Sure.
if you're remodeling. You know,
I think all that would help. It's just a lot of, it's just misinformation, uneducated.
if I can jump in at this point, because it seems like now would be a good time to talk between Paulina's comments and Bob's comments. As far as an increase in what people are paying over and giving them more of an increase, I personally would like to see us wait until next year for a couple of reasons. Number one was one of our concerns is we're doing this and then we're going to take its temperature and see how it's going to go. And we're not going to get a real accurate reading on what the temperature is if we change, you know, make changes like, you know, forcing people to start saving some money. And what's going to happen, as Bob mentioned, is that in a couple of years, he's not going to have to water as much. His plants are going to become established. But chances are when he was putting in those plants, he wasn't thinking about spending a couple $100 extra a month to water them right away. And it would be nice to give him a year to help him get towards that established and other people that are in the same boat. So while I appreciate that, I don't think, I want to make sure that everybody understands that we need to take corrective action, but the sky's not falling. And so we don't need to take severe corrective action, and let's see if we can find a middle ground that can make everybody comfortable, that allow the folks like Bob that have just planted a bunch of plants to get closer towards, you know, his goal. And then once we know what this first year looks like, then we adjust our path and determine where we need to go from there.
Can you clarify what checking the temperature means? What are you looking at there?
Well, as Chad, I think Chad explained that we have determined that we need a mechanism where each year during the budget process, we look at our income from water, what we're paying for that water, and things like cost of living and things like that. And then we evaluate whether there needs to be an increase or whether we need to adjust course on that. Is that, am I describing it accurately?
Yeah.
So I think that what we should do is we should wait until next year during the budget process and then have this conversation. And then we would be falling in line with our goal, which was 2024.
Really quick, I'm sorry, I forgot that for those of you folks up behind the gallery, I want to introduce, this is Mark McFadden. Mark runs our water system, he runs all the public works stuff that's in here. Mark was told when I first started in 2011 that all he would have to do is push a button and the system would run itself. We learned that wasn't quite true.
I got a branch.
The water,
Not true. So.
the water system that he operates, the way that he operates, it is state of the art. And I know people say, well, I can taste chlorine in my water. You know, what's going on in here? The problem that we have is our water is too clean. Chlorine is not changing state. We put the minimal amount of chlorine that we possibly can, that we're allowed to by law, and yet you can smell it. And the reason is our water comes from 160 feet down below one of the biggest water filtration systems in the world, which is all the dune sand that's underneath us.
Honestly, I get more complaints usually in the summer, and I get to tell people where I'm working as well. So.
Warrington, our friends, our friends Warrington, they actually, their service water, they pull out of the Lewis and Clark River. And this kind of speaks to what it is that we're all going through. Lewis and Clark River, of course, you know, salmon, all the things that we have to do for the ecology, they're going to be running low on water, and they've got a lot of different opportunities to grow their city. And so that's the direction that they're heading. They're gonna have to upgrade their system. And what they're saying is that maybe Gerhard should be a part of that. We're gonna look at our system. We're gonna look at potentially using less of their water, if any at all. But we do have emergency agreements with these communities. And compared to 11 years ago, when we first started this, we're in a much better shape in regards to resiliency. We're able to backfeed Warrenton. Warren's able to feed us, of course. Seaside, we have connections between the two of them. And then even talking to Deanna Mansella today, we had a good conversation about looking at the greater area as far as what's going on with water. But we know that we've got, some issues there. I'd also like to introduce Stephen Peters. Stephen, big guy here, he works with Mark. He's Mark's second guy. And these two spend a lot of time working in water. Justine here takes all the phone calls about the water. She is the one that's dealing with bills. And in the summertime, it gets a little exciting because people are calling like, what kind of things are they saying these days?
There's a leak, they want things fixed,
Yes.
meters are broken.
I can't, there's no way I could have used that much water. Well, we're able to help them out if we can find a villain, but we work really hard to find a villain because we want to repair the problem with them before just trying to make adjustments on their bill. So we get a lot of phone calls, and most of them, I think, have to do with probably landscaping systems.
We have a lot of users, I mean, we really do, where they will go 9 months using 0 to 1 cons, and then they will use 61 cons in a 2-month cycle.
So a month like May,
Yes.
like we had this year, where it was dry compared to last year.
So you'll look at the 3 cycles, the June cycle, if you have a June, August, and then October, those 3 will be high, so they'll be almost flatlined, they will go way, way up, and then they will flatline. And we have a lot, and so it's very hard to detect leaks, because a lot of times they end up using. So when I look at the meter reads every other month, it can be difficult to detect those people. It's easier in the winter months, because then you can really see that they went up to 31 when they normally don't use 31, but it is hard. And we do have a lot of areas that have high consumption. And it is almost always sprinkler systems.
Okay, I'm gonna call on Jack because he's been waiting there.
That's all right, thanks. I don't have to give you my address, do I?
Yes, sir, you do.
408 West Crucial Circle, Gerhard. And that's Jackson. I want to say that I agree with Palana wholeheartedly that there should be a multi-tiered rate process that clearly identifies conservation. And that would be through higher pricing to de-incentivize people to consume a lot of water. And you can do it in multiple levels. Second, it would be nice, I think, to try to equalize this schedule rates to what we would pay Warrenton as if we weren't producing our own water and having to buy water from them directly. I don't have a clue if it's less, it's more.
Well, I think Mark and I can talk to you about that a little bit. Mark,
Okay.
what's your water rates?
In Warrenton, oh, boy, I don't know, because I don't have mine, because all mine's together, I pay monthly. I go in front of you, but mine has sewer and garbage, we have garbage, sewer, water, and we pay like a $6 stormwater fee too, so, which we don't do here.
Well, I don't mean to stop the process here, data like that, but it'd be nice to know how much extra is it really costing us to do business with Warrenton?
Well, if you look at it, I mean, they're charging their people $32 a month.
For what level of consumption?
For like, I think it's 4,000 or 5,000 gallons.
That's what I'm saying.
Just 2,000 gallons.
Just normalize it down to how we bill out. the consumption level.
Yeah, and I'm outside the city and I'm paying at least 60 cents per month. Water.
The next question I had was, when you raise the rates, whether it's just one flat fee or whether it's tiered, what actual costs are you trying to cover?
I guess it would be pointing out what you just pointed out, it would be the additional money that we're paying in the warranty. That's a big one.
Operation costs.
Operation costs.
So all in operation costs.
Yes.
So you're not trying to recover anything for future expenditures as far as conservation.
Well, maybe not
System, how
conservation.
about system development costs? It seems to me it's, Warden feels like it's okay for them to charge us. So why aren't we charging ourselves for future system development? That's just a rhetorical question for somebody to maybe think about, put some value on it.
I think you'll see some of that during the next conversation.
Well, that's what I think was where she was talking about, is we're trying to do this little bits at a time to see where we're at. So.
Right. And that was part of, that is part of the increase was at the end of the year, and Donovan's online, it looks like, just so you know. And so if we need him to answer any questions. But yes, that's part of our goal, is to get not only so that we're operating in the red, but we're operating so well in the red that we can set aside money for future expenditures. And that's what they've been doing in the past. It's why we're not at a crisis right now, even though things had turned around, because they were putting away so much money before. But we don't need to put away quite as much money as they were in years past, but we do still need, at the end of the year, we want to be able to roll over, what is it, 90 days? Is that correct? 90 days operating expenses at the end of the year is what we still want to have into our accounts to roll over as a cushion for a rainy day, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a rainy day around.
And another thing that is also an expense that's increased is that Gerhart traditionally has been 60% unoccupied, meaning second homes, right? Some very small amount of those are short-term vacation rentals. But many of the homes here in Gerhart would not be, it didn't have people in them. So they were paying $39 for not using any water. I think one of the major increases we've got is those houses have filled in. We're not 60% anymore. We've got a lot more people living in town full time. They're telecommuting. They're doing everything online now. So we do have a lot of neat families that are in town. A lot of people I don't recognize, and that increased our water usage. It did not increase our revenue.
And it increased the demand on you, right? And
Correct,
we're
yeah, 'cause
alone.
they're still paying that $39 because they're not going over the over usage, so they're still paying it, but they might be using 3,000 gallons. So.
No, so that's just another interesting piece of this. And then another thing was, what condition is our water system in? How much money do we need to put aside? And we do need to put more money aside. In our previous budgets, before we started seeing this downward trend, we were putting $120,000 a year into the reserve account. And we grew it quite healthily over those past 10 years. Recently, now we're starting to spend that money. I would like to get up into putting at least $100,000, a year into that again, and even more, so that we can save money. There's things that we want to do to upgrade the water treatment facility, add a new skid unit so that it is more efficient, and then it is more resilient as well, and that we can produce more water if and when we get more water out. So that's something that we're going to have to look at. We do have old pipes, although I did just get back from Rome. They're not that old, but they're old. They were built by the Romans, so they'll probably have to be replaced more often. But we know we have the highway out there. The highway has got some of the older infrastructure that we have. There was a plan maybe when the bypass was going to go through. Mark had worked with them, and we're potentially going to get that water line replaced for us. Well, that's not the case. The bypass isn't happening. We're going to talk about future Highway 101 changes. That opportunity will probably take to replace some of those lines, but we do have some older lines. The things that Mark has been doing, though, has been replacing those lines quite frequently. The thing that Mark's also been doing is creating loops within town. So we've made connections where connections didn't exist before. These loops are good for the health of the system. They're good for the quality of the water, and they're also good for fighting fires.
Oh, yeah.
And so we've added some resiliency with these loops. And so we do have water pipe that needs to be replaced, but it's functional. Mark, I was asking you earlier about how many water breaks we've had in the last couple of years, as far as water main breaks.
Yeah, I mean, one major one, Stephen pointed out to me again, we had a little one on Woodland, but I didn't even count that.
Yeah, that's February of 2022.
Shut anybody off, but the majority of you guys see these breaks and shutting water off, it's normally not because of a main break, it just happened. I mean, the last 3 we had were because contractors dug right through our water main, or
Moments after we look at
or
it,
they backed into the fire hydrant, or, I mean, that's the majority of stuff is human error when it comes to water line breaks. Small service lines, I mean, you're gonna get those probably, at least on a daily basis. We've got 1,800 services in town. Every one of those services has at least 2 valves on it, a meter, and about 4 different joints in it. So, I mean, it's that's just doing business there, so, but we really haven't had much as far as, I mean, the one on F Street that's the biggest one I've had in probably 10 years, the most complicated one. Yeah, 24 years is the only one where I had to get in the truck down to Portland and find parts for it, so.
So in light of those comments that you just made, Mark, how do you know 100,000 extra money is gonna cover anything?
I don't,
Exactly.
I can't predict the future.
We have, we have an
So,
idea though. We
We
have
do have an idea.
a water master plan.
Correct.
And the water master plan has looked at our system, the age of the system, and what we have, what we don't have, and it has estimated some of the large projects that we have. We know what those are.
empirically, have you tested the system incrementally, just in stages? You can pressure up on, I guess, I don't know the system, but you could take it in segments, pressure it up gently and see where you got a bleed off with leaks.
No, I mean, why would you want to go break water mains? So,
Wait a minute, I just said you slowly.
it doesn't work that way, so.
Well, it seems to work in other areas.
We keep it about 72, 74 PSI.
Yeah, sometimes 80, depending on where we're at, and the pump is going on and off.
Yeah.
I fully monitor the pressure of the system at all times.
But we are,
Do you know-
to answer your question, we're gonna take a different route at that, and we're gonna look at leak detection.
Correct.
So there are organizations,
That's
to
good.
answer your question, I think this is better, so that we can have somebody come in, they come in with all sorts of equipment. They put their ear on the hydrant to see the train's coming,
Okay.
and they can hear what some of those things are going, and that is something that we have decided that we're going to do moving forward. Just fun facts, an acceptable water loss in a city is what, 10%?
Right around 10 to 15%, so
Whose acceptance?
That would be,
the feds and the states, comes under EPA, so.
Is that a water resource criteria or EPA criteria?
Both, and the state usually takes on their criteria as well. The country as a whole is cracking down on water conservation right now. I mean, it's a big deal. People don't think it's as big a deal here because of all the rain we get, but you go to places where, I mean, there's even places in Oregon where they don't allow them to plant grass and stuff anymore. And there's water police, and you're only allowed to water X amount at certain times of night or day, or in, you know, and they monitor that stuff. I believe Bend is one of them, but
So,
yeah,
so Mark, when you're producing during the winter, where you have, I'm assuming, a lower consumption level, how much extra water could you produce comfortably?
my system will allow me to produce 600 gallons a minute right
And how much do you?
now. How much do I use in the winter?
Yeah,
Boy, I usually only run the machines during the day at 300,000 gallons, because I run them both at 150, so I'd have to look up and do the math on that, but it's not.
but you do have, you think you got extra capacity to produce?
My capacity, yeah, but I can't produce any more than 600 gallons a minute, so.
Okay.
And right now in June, we're taking every bit of that 600 gallons. So this year in June.
in our water rights, and in us getting more water, we're gonna have to upgrade our system to be able to treat that. So there's a cost in that. But the water restriction that we're under has nothing to do with the infrastructure that we have in the pumps. The pumps that we have what, 8 of them out there now?
Correct.
We have the ability to put 13 in, we have permit for that.
Correct.
And we are only running how many right now? Or generally? 2.
At a time, right now, we run 2 at most in the summer. I mean, well, May and June are my highest months. I may be running 4 pumps at a time because each well produces different amounts of water. Like you go to well 13, it can produce up to like 230 gallons a minute, opposed to well 1 that can produce 85 gallons a minute. So they go bigger as you go farther south.
So as the demand goes up, Mark does math and turns on certain pumps to get that amount of water.
Correct.
So the
Yeah,
reason I asked Mark that question was,
Yeah.
would storage help?
Of course, storage, more storage would always help. But it would also help Warrenton. I mean, they're looking into more storage as well. So, I mean, there's nothing bad ever about more storage. I mean, that's always a win.
So
Whether or not we can store enough to last, it all depends upon our water conservation efforts. Or, how much we're using.
How many gallons are we going through right now a day? Not
Right now,
What are we making a day? Or what are we distributing a day?
right now, me out of my plant, I'm going about 240,000 gallons a day. I don't know what I've used for Warrenton.
So there's days in there where we're supposed to 1 million gallons a day.
So in June,
Is what we were pumping out. We have a 1 million gallon water reservoir up on the hill that at 160 some feet actually pressurizes the system, especially during the evenings. And for those of you that play pickleball and tennis, there's 250,000 gallons underneath underneath those courts. So the water that we produce goes into those, then we distribute it. And then also we pressurize the system that fills that tank. When the demand's high, drains that tank. Another, fun fact is that we're on an aquifer here. And with all this information and data that we have, we're looking forward to working with WRD and some water modelers to determine exactly what's going on. But there is an incredible amount of water underneath our feet, and it is flowing out into the ocean. And the amount of water that's flowing out there, and the way that it works, it's actually holding the ocean back. So we do pay attention to how much water we pump out because we don't want to bring salt water in. Of course, because that would be a bad thing. We'd have to move our wells.
it'd be devastating.
But we haven't been moving ocean water and we've been pumping. When we pump, we don't notice that the aquifer goes like this and then slowly comes up. It's performing. There is water under there, but it's what's best for the environment, best for the Neocoxy Creek. We have to decide all of those things and go through the data and make some good decisions. But we'll do that as a group.
So
To answer your question, yeah, storage would be great.
Jack, one more question and we'll move on, okay?
okay. Well, comment. That storage, I think, would be instrumental to the city as far as trying to back off the water during the summer. Second, the last thing, I'm a little gobsmacked about the cost of water taps. I mean, that is so cheap. And why are we not charging more for our water taps? And let me tell you, I come from a background where the last water tap I paid in a semi-arid area was $21,500 for a subdivision.
Yeah.
So it seems to me there's a huge, in this day and age of conservation, if you really believe in conservation, there must be some room to increase those water tap fees substantially.
We're looking at that now as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then the other portion of that question was impact fees. How come we don't look to impact fees to try to offset or contribute it to the cost to operate the water system?
Will be something more adjustable on a moment-by-moment basis, or how does that work?
Usually it's a percentage of your documented closing costs.
Oh, gosh.
So if you closed on a $500,000 house and it's a percentage. Other cities that I'm aware of just play I think in Kansas, it was $22,000.
like system development fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, CCs, and we are too low. We are, and that's something that we need to look at because it's the right thing to do for the residents as well. Gerhardt's just always been that small city that's been able to be very efficient. Well, we've done our best, you know, and I think that the things are just catching up to us. And it's time to make these adjustments. It's time to start thinking clearly, and the council is very much interested in this. I have lots of conversations with them.
21st century. That's where we're going. Thank you very much, Jeff. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Make a comment? Is it? Christy, is there anyone online that wants to speak? Do they have their hand raised?
There are no hands raised now, but no one's been given the option, so if anyone would like to.
Okay, thanks a lot.
That's smart.
Okay, so we'll go to city councilor comments if any of them have a comment they want to make. Let's start with you, Dana.
Well, you know, I'm pleased by today because I knew that when we started discussing this, that we would learn something and that people would tell us that they understand where we're at and why we need to increase our fees. And nobody's screaming that it's too much. In fact, I'm kind of surprised people are screaming that we need to do, not screaming, suggesting that we do more. And I do believe that we probably will do more and have to do more in the future. However, my concern still is for the folks that not only will this increase impact them, but all of the other things that are happening right now with the economy and all the other increases that they're faced. I'd rather that we, you know, we've already moved it from 10% in January to 15% sooner now. I'd like to see us do that. I'd like to see us talk about increasing the water conservation efforts again next year when people get a little bit, so there's not shock to people and that they can adjust for, because like I said, there are a lot of people that have planted a lot this year in a very dry month, and then all of a sudden they're going to be surprised with a little extra bill. I like Jack's suggestion of doing more as far as the startup fees and things like that. I like to see that kind of stuff. That's the stuff I'll be interested in hearing more about in the city council meeting. But also I would like to thank everybody for coming out. I know 3 o'clock in the afternoon is kind of a weird time, but I'm glad that we can have a meeting at this time because it's a tremendous, it takes a tremendous effort on our staff to have these meetings. And I don't know if you know, but we've been having a record number of late night meetings, which means that they miss their family time. And they either get paid overtime or they have to take time away from work in our front office. And since we run such a lean and tight shift that we can't afford to have people take time away from the office. So thank you for working with us and allowing us to have this meeting at this time.
Thank you.
Steve?
2 things. I really appreciate questions from anybody and everybody because it makes me think, makes us look at what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I can't thank you all enough for your questions. And I feel like they're really important in this process. And then the second thing is on the back of that is how we analyze stuff. And I think that, you know, it's going to be good to get some data analyzed and some more things looked at so that we, as a decision-making body, have some more facts to go off of in our decisions.
The ladies have really done a lot of work and they have made over the last 2 years some incredible, they've been striving to make this system work better and to be able to report, you know, what it is that we're doing. So between Justine and Christy, they've worked on our in our water software system, our billing software to make it work better. And then just the accounting of the whole thing. So with us having somebody like those two, we're going to be in pretty good shape to be able to make some.
But, you know, as I said at our last meeting, what, you know, I would love to see some facts about whether it would cost us more to develop more of our own water rights and get another $400,000 I forgot what you called it,
Skid.
skid.
More than that.
No, I thought you said 400. Anyway, whether that's gonna be more cost effective versus getting, staying with Warrenton and or upping our purchase from Warrenton. So I'd like to see that cost benefit analysis weighed out.
To speak to that, my impression is that Warrenton has asked us also to look very hard into this, whether we'll be able to do it or not, that Warrenton would like to see us at least explore this avenue. Is that correct?
Yes, they want us to, with our conservation efforts, which we said we would do, we haven't doing. They want us to provide more water for our people so they can provide more water for theirs. But yeah, so that's the direction that we're heading in much because they're asking, well, they've got a lot of infrastructure that they're going to have to update, but they've also got the potential for some very large neighborhoods coming in that they're just playing around with. This isn't for sure. This isn't anything that's, in that, but they've got people that are interested, and they've been clearing a lot of land lately.
Yeah, 400 units going on at my house.
Yeah, as much as they objected to us initially starting this up, they're grateful that we have the system now, right? It's
Well, I
worked
would
out
think
to
so,
benefit.
yeah, 'cause I mean, it's been, in the long run, it's been great for both of us. So, because I don't think either one of us expected the growth of the amount of water we're gonna be using.
Rita?
I was really encouraged by all the people that came today. Thank you for coming. I appreciate that. And thank Mark McFadden and the water department because he knows all. So there wasn't a question that we asked that he wasn't willing to get back to us or that he didn't answer. So thank you. And thank you, Justine. And Chaz.
I got it.
I'm done.
Should we, should we see if Donovan has anything to say that we didn't? Maybe we should let the experts speak. I don't know.
We could ask. Steve, do you have anything you want to say?
Yes, I got stuck on Highway 26 and had to turn around, so I apologize for missing your meeting. There must have been one heck of an accident on 26 today. But what I want to point out from just listening to your conversations is you're on the right track. We talked about this in the council. You're going to go, I recommended 10% this year, 10% next year. You want to climb the curve quicker to get back to your reserves. Just to give the audience a little sense of the urgency of this matter. Remember that line we talked about, 90 days of operating expenses is that's industry standard for requirements. As of June 30th, 2023, you had 4.6 days of operating expenses in reserve in the operating fund. So there is an urgency here to correct your rates. We're going to come back probably this winter, and we're going to talk about conservation rates it's called inverted block pricing. It's very common, and we're going to present hard data. We have the data now, and we're going to present that to the council here in upcoming meetings to show what could potentially be done for that conservation pricing. And I think you're thinking straight as a group that that's an area you want to explore.
Thank you, Steve. Okay. Chad, do you want to recap what's been said?
Next move. I mean, it sounds like we're all in agreement. We don't have anybody jumping up and down saying that this water rate is too much. Like you said, maybe not enough, but we'll start here. That's what we're going to recommend. The city council can make that decision. We're writing the ordinance now, and we are going to be presenting that to the city council next Wednesday at the city council meeting.
It's not an ordinance though, right?
Excuse me, no, it's a resolution. Thank you, sir. And then that way we'll be able to move forward, make adjustments or what have you. So we plan on making this decision here in a little bit, in about a week. Exactly.
Yeah. Week and 3 hours. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Mark.